Beginning in early medieval times, glorious stained glass windows have inspired congregations in the great Gothic cathedrals of Europe. Windows like these in the astonishing nave of Sainte-Chapelle in Paris, and these classic 13th century panels at Chartres serve not only as a poor man's Bible, allowing believers who could not read Latin to learn the story of the Gospels, but also as man's message to the Creator, praise of the Lord, a sublime symphony of colour worthy of God's world, illuminating their cathedrals with multicoloured light as if projected from heaven itself. Unfortunately, the same properties that give glass its qualities of beautiful translucency also mean that it is brittle and very easily broken. This has made glass a prime target for vandals, with stained glass being especially vulnerable because places of worship are generally not occupied at night and, regrettably, may fall victim to ideological prejudice or even racial hatred. Hi, this is John from Artistry and Glass with important information for custodians of religious buildings. We've been restoring damaged stained glass since 1986, and we've made this video to help you understand the various types of art glass present in your buildings, the range of replacement costs, recommendations for maintenance and preservation, and what to do in the unfortunate event of vandalism, fire, or other disaster. Religious buildings in Tucson and the US incorporate at least 6 types of art glass products. Regular leaded stained glass is the most common, with pieces of colored glass fabricated in H-shaped lead or zinc channel called cane, in traditional windows like this 1910 era panel, or in more modern styles like this on the right. Painting on glass is used to render details, primarily faces, hands and feet, which cannot be represented with coarser lead lines. Examples range from irreplaceable masterpieces like this Tiffany panel and this famous panel by John Lafarge, to typical neo-Gothic designs common in older Tucson churches. Copper foil, sometimes called Tiffany style because it was invented by Louis Comfort Tiffany, is generally used for smaller interior panels where the finer solder lines allow more design detail to be rendered. Faceted or dalle de verre windows have become popular since the 1950s and are made with 1-inch thick slabs called dalles of colored glass cemented by epoxy, creating a mosaic-like appearance, particularly appropriate for modern abstract or non-figurative designs. The versatility of glass and the creativity of glass artists mean that there are many other varieties of glass art, including, for example, these delightful panels in a synagogue made by sandblasting and engraving flashed or cased glass. These are abstract images representing women of the Torah made by famous Israeli artist Ami Shamir, reminiscent of Picasso and Chagall. Finally, several religious buildings in Tucson have made use of colored glass and ceramic fragments called tesserae to create indoor or outdoor mosaic patterns. Now let's see the consequences of damage to some of these art glass types. First, simple leaded panels, like this from a Dallas area church. Notice, incidentally, there is no protective glazing on the outside, and we'll cover this issue later in the video. Now, unfortunately, even a simple stained glass panel is difficult and therefore expensive to repair, partly because the construction method with colored glass fitted into H-shaped cane means that most windows cannot be repaired on site. They have to be removed to be fixed. Here are some examples from closer to home. The Santa Cruz Catholic Church on 22nd Street in Tucson, where we successfully sourced opalescent glass from the Kokomo Company to match closely the original glass. In this example from a Lutheran church in Midtown Tucson, the broken window is made of semi-obscure, so-called English muffle glass, available from the Paul Wismack Company in West Virginia, which once again we were able to match very closely. The cost for restoration increases dramatically with elaborately painted stained glass like this Gothic Revival window from an Episcopal church. As before, the damaged panel has to be removed from the opening and the opening has to be boarded up. And in this case, each broken light has to be recreated by a specialized glass artist, laboriously painting the new glass in numerous stages, each stage being fired at about 1100 degrees in a kiln before the panel is finally reassembled. Prices for painted, fired stained glass range from $400 to $700 per square foot or more. So typical large windows may easily cost tens of thousands of dollars to replace. With faceted glass, or dalle de verre, being constructed from 1-inch thick slabs of glass in a matrix of epoxy, one would think that these windows would be strong enough to resist attack by vandals. However, this is surprisingly not so. In the Tucson metro area alone, we have been called upon to repair faceted glass at 4 churches in recent years. Because these windows are generally bonded to the masonry, repairs need to be done on site. Dowels are carefully fabricated, cut to size and faceted in our studio, and then cemented into place to fill the spaces left by the broken glass. As this example from an East Side Catholic church clearly shows, faceted glass windows are not vandal-proof, so custodians should consult security professionals for advice on securing the exterior of the building. Now, unfortunately, vandals do not restrict their activities to windows. Artistry in Glass is also able to repair damaged statuary, like this defaced Virgin Mary, which we restored by cleaning and airbrushing the offending graffiti. This damage to St. Jude was caused by a kind of involuntary vandalism, when an elderly parishioner took the saint home, hoping that he would intercede on her behalf to cure a sick family member. Once the culprit was identified, a compassionate church official promised to take no legal action, providing the statue was returned immediately. And we were then invited to repair the damage, and also correct the faded colors of the vestments, adding a golden decorative fringe. These cases of window and property damage are just a few examples of the highly regrettable but widespread phenomenon of church vandalism, and the high and increasing repair costs clearly demonstrate the importance of having a strategy for conservation and restoration of stained glass in your place of worship. Vandalism is almost inevitable, but you can take precautions by following our simple 4-point action plan. Nearly all religious stained glass represents the culmination or fruition of a process of prayer and consultation within the congregation during the formative years of the church or synagogue. Windows thus represent a crucial inspiration and historical record. Furthermore, by some estimates, 40 to 50% of religious stained glass windows in the US are donor recognition panels, priceless memorials for loved ones often commissioned many decades ago. With this historical and sentimental importance in mind, and particularly in view of the very high replacement costs, it is vital to have written and photographic documentation of your stained glass windows. In the event of fire or vandalism, it is only through archival documentation that these art glass treasures can be restored or recreated. Whether your archival documentation is justified or not, it is essential to appraise your stained glass to determine the replacement cost for insurance purposes. The cost of stained glass, and especially painted glass, has risen farther than inflation in recent years. So an accurate and up-to-date appraisal is essential to give insurance companies the information they need to process your claim. A page from a typical Artistry and glass appraisal is shown here, with prices removed for customer confidentiality. The condition of the glass paint, lead came, and structural support system should be evaluated by an expert. Stained glass deteriorates with time, and virtually all panels over 75 years old need preventative maintenance. In Arizona particularly, west or south-facing windows will be subjected to very large diurnal temperature variations, and the repeated expansion and contraction of metal cane results in loosening of support bars and the drying up and falling out of glazing putty, causing windows to buckle and sag. If sagging is left uncorrected, the entire panel will fall to pieces. As a follow-up to the condition report, church and synagogue custodians should request estimates of the cost to restore defective or broken stained glass and an analysis of the effectiveness of protected glazing and recommendations for its modification or replacement. Protective glazing systems must be designed and installed by experts. Unventilated glazing, for example, can do more harm than good, so call Artistry and Glass if you need detailed advice. This is a complicated subject, but in brief, tempered glass is impact resistant but will eventually shatter, whereas high-grade Lexan is almost indestructible, but it is very expensive and may yellow with UV exposure. Therefore, many experts currently favor laminated safety glass, which, although it breaks quite easily, maintains its integrity and protection by virtue of the vinyl interlayer, which is sandwiched between two sheets of regular glass. Of course, protecting windows from the outside will not prevent vandals from damaging the inside, as in this Baptist church, where police report that the perpetrators broke into the building and used fire extinguishers to smash out these third-floor windows. Further evidence for inside vandalism comes from this spectacular police body cam footage showing a vandal who appears, and I'll leave it to the clinical psychologists for confirmation, but appears to be motivated less by ideology or hatred and much more by simple boredom, or what sociologists call a sense of estrangement from society. Whatever the reasons, it's clear that the traditional respect for the sanctity of religious buildings can no longer be taken for granted in the 21st century, and serious attention must be paid to safety and security programs. Now, in the unfortunate event of vandalism, here's what we recommend. Email digital images showing close-ups and general views of the damage to John Wakefield at Artistry and Glass. Carefully preserve broken glass and debris. This may be useful for restoration and color matching. If appropriate, Artistry and Glass will schedule a site visit and prepare restoration estimates for insurance purposes. As well as repairs, we are available for new commissions in churches, synagogues, and private chapels, as well as handling non-liturgical restoration of stained and beveled glass and Tiffany-style lampshades. So call Artistry and Glass for advice on religious stained glass documentation, appraisal, and expert restoration since 1986.